Well, it is still bloodless, but it's very, very tense, Colin. You could see the column of police, the Royal Thai Police Force here, and behind them are the army, and behind the unarmed riot soldiers are heavily armed soldiers of the Royal Thai Army, and the concern is that there could now be clashes. We have been marching, or following the marchers, the anti-coup protesters, from one shopping centre on the outskirts of the city centre. They marched to this point and they were met with these security officers, and you can see over here now the protesters are beginning to disband, which is clearly what the military wants. This is very, very tense because, of course, one of the key conditions that the general in charge of this country now made is that he did not want any gatherings, any political gatherings of more than 5 people. Well, I can tell you there have been at least 200 people here so far. Our day started this morning. We went to a shopping centre where a small number of protesters had gathered. But the moment they arrived, the army arrived, not very heavily armed, but they were there. They were showing their presence and demonstrating their zero-tolerance approach to any sort of protesters. An agreement was made at the time that the army would pull back if the protesters decided to stay put. The army did pull back, but the protesters then marched 4 or 5 kilometres. Their plan was to march much, much further on to Victory Monument, which is down the road there in the heart of Bangkok. But as you can see, they haven't got any further. In fact, the police are moving forward slightly. These, as I said, are anti-coup protesters. They represent a proportion of the population here who supports the government of Yingluck Shinawatra, the government that is now being deposed by a military coup. But they don't by any means make up the majority of this country. They make up a proportion, as I say, and that therein lies the problem that this country has. Many people here support the coup. Indeed, this morning we saw some people who turned up at the shopping centre with placards saying that they were supporting the coup. They were quickly rounded up by the army who they are supporting for their own protection and taken away. So at the moment, Colin, I would describe this as tense. It certainly was 15 minutes ago. The army and the police seem to have disbanded many of the protesters, but there are many side streets here. Many of them will simply have moved down those side streets as they try to make it on this very, very hot day to the centre of Bangkok and to the square.
History teaches us, Mark, doesn't it, that very often people who plot military coups start out with benign intentions. They want to right the country's wrongs, they want to restore law and order and stability and create a breathing space for democracy to return. And very often, unfortunately, they stray from that manual, from that military coup playbook. And already we're starting to see it happen, aren't we? We're seeing academics arrested. We're seeing the people who might turn some of these spontaneous protests into something more forceful against the military. They've been arresting them.
Yes, General Priyat, who is the 60-year-old Thai Army general who now runs this place, 67 million people live in Thailand, he made it very clear, if you're to take him at his word, that what he wants to do is restore order, and then after order and peace is restored, he wants to restore democracy and bring this country back to its people. If you like, he's saying he wants to press the reset button on politics here. But at the same time, he has detained Yingluck Shinawatra, the Prime Minister, up until 2 weeks ago. She spent the night in detention. We're not sure where. Her family have been detained as well. And as you mentioned, reports coming in this morning of pretty prominent academics as well, not necessarily yet being detained, but certainly being told that they need to report to the Army Club, which is the general's turf. It's there that he called that meeting of both sides 2 days ago to try and knock their heads together, as he would put it. He didn't give them much of a chance, though. After just 2 days of talks, he announced in that meeting that they clearly weren't going to get on, that he was going to run the country, that a coup was happening. He then went straight to the TV studios, announced that coup, and those TV studios have now predominantly been shut down. It's not possible to get satellite television here at the moment because they're worried about what reports might go out on that television. I should say, though, now, as we leave you, though, Colin, that right now, although it is tense, it's calm. But that's the thing. 15 minutes ago, it was very, very tense. They were right up against each other here. The riot police were in front of the non-riot police, if you like. Now that's switched round. Things have moved back.